Well, we're down to the final four in our best moment in Maine hockey history bracket, and we're going to have a little roundtable to talk about it with a couple of guys that have been in the market for quite some time and experienced all of these moments and many more. Dave Eid from WGME joins us, Lee Goldberg from Center Maine. Guys, how are you? Thanks for being here.
Great, Mike. Thanks for having us.
Very polite way of calling us old, though. I like the way you did it.
I'm subtle like that. So before we get into the actual moments that are in the Final Four, when I say best moment in Maine hockey history, what are some of the things that immediately pop to your guys' mind? Dave, we can start with you.
The first memory is Paul Correa. And those teams, those first Maine teams, 93, 95, they were just lights out. They were so good. And I had just gotten to Maine in 92. Was up in Bangor at that point at WVII, and then got down to Portland in 93, late in 93. So it was just a magical moment. And I think Lee would agree that, I mean, really those Maine teams really put college hockey on the map here in this state. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, for me, just the words Maine hockey are a little more personal. For me, it's 1977 and the opening of the Cumberland County Civic Center. I was 8 years old. We had season tickets to the Maine Mariners, and I'll never forget every player on that team. I remember the yard sales. There'd be such great fights because they were Flyers affiliate, and the Flyers were tough back in the 70s, right? That was what they were known for. And there was just, as a kid, I remember seeing equipment all over the ice and just people brawling all the time. And then there was hockey too. So that's my first memory that I will never forget. So,
well, one of the great things about all this is, every organization, and including Maine, has had great success. They've all won championships, and obviously the current iteration of the Mariners trying to achieve that now. But that's one of the things that you can have a storied hockey history in any market, but to have the success that teams have had in this market, and in many instances, immediate success, winning championships in very first seasons of existence, something really special and unique to Maine.
Yeah, well, Lee mentioned the Mariners in 77. Now, I was not here then, but I remember talking to the late Frank Frixeris. And Lee, I'm sure Bruce has told you this story as well, that 77 team, when they played Moscow Dynamo, and some of the players on the Moscow team ended up playing in the 80 Olympics against the U.S. This was a power-packed team that came in on an exhibition schedule. They beat up on the NHL teams, and the Mariners beat them 1-0. And I remember Frank telling me that there was not a seat to be found at the time, the Cumberland County Civic Center. Lee, I don't know if you remember that game at all. You were a young boy, but I remember that one.
Yeah, not only do I remember Drew Calder scoring the goal for the Mariners, I remember his celebration. I remember the pile on the ice. I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it now. I mean, I was a kid. But that is like one of those, where were you when it happened for Maine sports, that specific moment? That was unbelievable. And there was not an empty seat. There were people standing in the aisles, and you could smoke and drink in the aisles back then. And Fix and Bruce were probably doing both of those during the game. Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
And we had numerous of those Soviet exhibition moments nominated when we opened this up to the fans at the beginning of the process. And that Drew Calder moment, I think Dave was mentioned multiple times, as well as the 1984 exhibition against Sokol Kiev, where the Mariners ended up winning the cup that year as well. But in the end, the final play on that portion of the bracket was indeed the 1978 Calder Cup, and I think it's going to be a tough one to beat here in our Final Four. That version of the Mariners became the first team in AHL history to win the Calder Cup in its first season. And as we were saying, it really kind of set the tone for 5+ decades of great hockey in Portland. So Lee, as a guy that was around as a fan at that time, if you can expand a little more about what it was like.
Well, it was new, and those players had such personality. And so to bring professional sports into Portland, Maine, which at the time, there wasn't. So there was no Sea Dogs. I mean, they were the first ones. So to be the first professional team and to have success immediately and to have likable characters. I mean, Pete Peters was on that team, and Pelly Lindbergh was on that team. I mean, they had such great players, and Paul Evans was on that team. I could go on and on. I remember almost every single guy on those teams, but they were all in the community. So you saw them out and about all the time, and they were easy guys to root for. They were very charismatic is probably the best word for it. And they were really good at hockey, and it was entertaining hockey. So they were the perfect package. And to come in and have that success right away, their fan base was instant. I mean, it didn't take any time to build it. It was ready to go.
Anything to add to that, Dave? I know you weren't really around at the time, but.
Well, yeah, no, I do remember, again, the Pirates coming to Portland that first year from Baltimore in the AHL. And along the same lines as Lee was referring to, hockey players in general, and we've known this forever, they're just they're teddy bears off the ice. On the ice, different story. But I found that same type of feeling with the Pirates' first season. The guys that came up and they were very, very likable. And they blended in with the city, and they were really, they were just, I remember, and Lee, you remember going into the locker room after a game, and, they'd be teeth missing and, but they do an interview, you know what I mean? They'd stop and talk, and very cordial, very polite. That's what I remember. And really, honestly, I can say that about all the AHL teams that have come through, and now all the ECHL teams, the Mariners, and even the visiting teams.
Well,
yeah,
not nothing, Dave, but you'll remember. I mean, a lot of that was Tom and Joyce Ebright. I mean, they're the ones who brought that team to Portland, and they were just the nicest people. They were the owners of the team, but there was no ownership air about them. They were present, they were local, they were involved, and their players did the same. So that made that specific team very lovable, as well as you loved the owners. It was a product you were happy to support.
Certainly, I couldn't agree more, Lee. And you'd often see them in the crowd, watching the game, and they were always there. And you're right, it was a wonderful, wonderful time. And not only did we get to see great hockey as well on top of it.
I think you guys covered the Pirates part of the bracket right there, but the '94 Calder Cup, unsurprisingly, is the final nominee out of that side of the bracket as well. The second team to win the Calder Cup in its first year, after the Mariners became the first team to do so. You touched on Tom Ebright, Godfrey Wood, a big part of that as well. Barry Trotz, of course, just winning Stanley Cup recently. And his name is very, very prominent around here. I know Lee and I were talking about that the other day. And again, just the instant success. And I think what you guys said about both the original Mariners and the Pirates, having the players in the community and getting them to embed themselves into the fabric of Portland and beyond. And I think that's something we've tried to do as well with the Mariners over the first 2 years, creating a lot of fan favorites. And I think that is something that's just going to continue. The core of players, Dylan Fox, of course, Ted Hart with the local connection, Alex Kyle, all those guys that have begun to make names for themselves. And I think the two teams that have come before them really kind of set the precedent for that.
Well, and Michael, it wasn't just a business model. I mean, look at how many players that used to play for the Pirates or the Mariners still live in the inner or outside city of Portland. I mean, there's dozens of them. It could go on from naming them all. So they weren't just invested because they felt like they had to for their job. It was genuine, and I think that's what the fans could relate to, and that's why it was an easy ticket to buy.
Oh yeah, Portland was definitely a desired landing spot. If you were going to play pro hockey in the AHL back then, and you got to Portland, it was who wouldn't want to live here? You know what I mean? It's just a beautiful area. The people are so nice. They bring you in, your family, and that's been really the hallmark of this area, and that's why the Sea Dogs have done so well. The Red Claws, now the Mariners, and I think it's a testament, to the people, really.
And let's move on to the UMaine portion, the final play there. Also not a surprise, the 1993 National Championship. Dave mentioned Paul Kariya right away. He had 100 points in 39 games that year, which is absurd. Garth Snow, 2.02 goals against average. The team, of course, had the famous 42-1-2 record. And Jim Montgomery with the natural hat trick in the national championship game against Lake Superior State in Milwaukee, despite the controversy at the end there with the phantom game-tying goal that didn't count. So, Lee, this was right around the time when you re-arrived. Start with you on this. What do you remember about the UMaine team of '93?
They were the college hockey version of the Duke basketball team in the mid-90s. They were rock stars. They had chutzpah. If you Google it, if you don't know what that is, they had personality. They were, hand to God, if I would put that team against any hockey team in history, for pro, college, whatever, to go 42-1-2.
Yeah.
Is unbelievable for a bunch of kids. Paul Carrillo was 17 years old. I mean, the Ferraro kids were just, twins. The twins were kids as well. Obviously, Jimmy Montgomery's a senior. Cal Ingraham was older, so they had some leadership. But that team and what Sean Walsh did with those guys, they had swagger. They were just so gifted, and a lot of their careers went on, to the next level, which kind of shows you just how good they were. But not only has there never been a better college hockey team in history, I would put them up against any single season for a hockey team ever, and I would say that Maine would be right there. That season was magical and will never be repeated.
Yeah, I think Sean did such an incredible job, and also Lee, Grant Stanbrook, a guy that we really don't talk about a whole lot, but he brought so many of those kids in from Canada, from elsewhere, and really helped build that, the culture, yes, but you talk about a powerhouse. They were lights out. They had it at both ends, between the cage and up front with Korea. And you mentioned the Ferraros. It was an unbelievable time for Maine hockey. But Grant is one of the guys, and, we've both interviewed the late Sean Walsh a bunch of times, and he was the guy that, if you could put up with, the discipline part on the ice, and we've been to those practices. I was in Bangor for 7-8 months, but I remember a few of those practices. If you were a hockey player, you could dial in. There was no better coach in the world than Sean Walsh.
Well, and it's great to bring up Grant Stanbrook real quick, because to quote our friend Dave Bill Parcells, Walshy was the cook, but Grant got the groceries. And I remember asking Stevie Carrillo why he came to Maine, and he said the reason because obviously Paul went there, Steve went there, and then Marty after him. So all three, and the sister went there as well. All four Koreas went to UMaine. And Stevie told me that the reason that Paul and the rest of them came was not Walshy, it was actually Grant Stanbrook, that he made them believe that this was the place for the Korea parents were convinced that this was the kids could get education and they could get top-notch hockey as well, and that mattered to them very much. And so Grant sold that. So that thanks for
he was unbelievable. Mike, he would find guys on the pond. I mean, really, this guy was old school, huh, Lee? I mean, he was unbelievable. But you're right. Just a phenomenal team, and it really took the whole state by storm that season. And Maine hockey has been, on the map ever since.
If you look at the game logs from that season, they were regularly blowing teams out like 10-1, 8-2. I mean, it's just unheard of for Division I hockey now. So certainly a dominant team that could go up against any of all time. And we should also make a hat tip to the Lewiston Maniacs, who were in this part of the bracket. Unfortunately, they were eliminated, but they won the 2007 QMJHL championship as well, which is certainly another significant part of Maine hockey history. And as we move on to the final part of our bracket, the current iteration of the Mariners, not a surprise for me here that the 18-round shootout from St. Patrick's Day 2019 5-4 win against Newfoundland. Obviously only 2 years of our existence, but there have been a lot of amazing moments, most of them at home. The Mariners have been a very good home team through their first 2 seasons. It was the 4th longest shootout in ECHL history. The longest belongs to Evansville in Florida in 2013. They went 21 rounds. The Mariners in this game were down 4-2 in the third, and then there was tons of drama in the shootout. They faced 3 moments where they had to score to keep it going. Wade Murphy ended up scoring twice as everybody on both teams took their first attempt, and then in the 18th round, Murphy scored the game winner. What I remember about it was just a great crowd on a Sunday afternoon. It was St. Patrick's Day late in the season. I believe there were 3,500 people in the arena. Just a great atmosphere, and probably the signature game of that season. And on my personal note, for me, it's actually the second absurdly long shootout I've had the chance to cover. When I was in junior hockey, covering the Keystone Ice Miners of the NAHL in 2014, they played a 20-round shootout against the Johnstown Tomahawks. So I think if you rank the top 10 longest shootouts in organized hockey, I've been behind the mic for 2 of them. So it's a nice little personal thing I throw on my resume. But I don't, you guys may or may not have been there, but we've seen some great moments with this current version of the Mariners, the Cross Insurance Arena, and the Newfoundland Growlers, the opponent that day, the team that won the Cup in the first season as a fellow expansion franchise. Just some of the things you guys have observed, whether it's that game or others, about our current franchise.
Well, I think for me, I've had a personal relationship with Riley Armstrong, your head coach. Long story short, he was supposed to be my son's U18 coach. And then he went to, I believe, West Virginia before he got to the Mariners. So I've known Riley for a while. And honestly, I can tell you, Mike, in my opinion about the Mariners in general, what you guys have done, it's been a first-class operation since day one. You guys have done things the right way. And I think a testament to that is a lot of the guys that you have coming back. You really don't see that with at that level. Guys, you almost see like a full roster turnover, and that hasn't been the case for the Mariners. You guys have had returning guys for now 3 years, which I think speaks volumes of what you're doing there as far as laying the groundwork, the foundation, and what you're trying to accomplish in Portland. So I think you guys have done a phenomenal job. There's really not one moment other than the original press conference that welcomed you guys to Portland, which is, for hockey fans like Lee and everyone else, having pro hockey back in Portland was almost a must, because we really missed the Pirates when they left. And there was a lot of, with the lease agreement at the time, and where were we going to get another team? Where were they going to come from? And you guys have done it the right way since day one.
Well, and from a different angle, but the same sentiment is, like the Sea Dogs and like the Red Claws, what I think was missing towards the end of the Pirates was the enjoyment factor of going to a game, win, lose, or draw. So, I mean, I want the Sea Dogs and the Red Claws and the Mariners to win every time they play. But if they don't, if I'm going to spend money to bring my family there, I want to leave having a really good time and feeling like not only was it a good product, but it was entertainment value was there, and it was just a good time. And the Mariners have done that, and that's that was something that was lacking besides just the hockey. So the quality of play is there, and then the experience is there as well. And it's important to have both of those when you're asking people in Portland, Maine, to spend money on your entertainment dollar. Okay, you got a lot of choices, so why am I picking you? And the Mariners have given a good reason as to why you should pick them. So I'm happy they're back. They're doing it right. So I'm, as you know, Michael, I'm a big fan. So I'm in the stands a lot now because I don't have to cover them anymore. So I'm there quite a bit.
Well, thank you for the kind words there on behalf of the organization, guys. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate your coverage as well. Through these first 2 seasons. Looking forward to more memories of course in season 3. And for everybody watching out there, and for you guys as well, make sure you head over and vote. MarinersofMaine.com/history bracket. The 1978 Calder Cup for the original Mariners, the 1993 National Championship for UMaine, the 1994 Calder Cup for the Portland Pirates, and the 18-round shootout for the current version of the Mariners. And next week we'll be down to the final 2. So Lee and Dave, thanks again for being here. I think it was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it, and looking forward to getting back to the arena for some more memories in the very near future.
Thanks, Mike. We've got December 4th circled on the calendar. We got our fingers crossed. And Lee, it's always great seeing you, buddy.
Yeah, I have to get up early in the morning now, so this is we should do this every day and catch up. So
Absolutely.
I'm in, buddy. I'm in.
Our new norm. Wait till you see Dave and I's book coming out, Michael. We'll get back on this for when Dave and I release our book.
Okay.
Coming soon.
Going to be a bestseller.
Coming soon, baby.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.